Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to be reviewing Giga Chikadze, who was recently added onto UFC 4 alongside another fighter in the light heavyweight division. We're going to be coming up against a Max Holloway who's in division 20 and I'm in division 19. So in terms of stylistically matchups, this is probably one of the worst matchups to get when using Giga. The only plus side is coming up against the Max, you will predominantly stay on the feet unless they want to incorporate the wrestling, which Max can do, as we've seen in his latest fight against Yair Rodriguez. And ever since then, I have seen people try to wrestle more with Max when they're coming up against a traditional striker, which Giga is. And yeah, so apart from wrestlers, this would probably be the worst matchup you can get. Obviously, Max, his stamina, volume, his level of punches is just very, very hard to deal with, especially that Giga, in terms of boxing, doesn't have the capability to really deal with Max Holloway's volume. And as you can see, my opponent's doing a great job of pressuring me and gets me to the ground early. So this is going to be a Max player that is going to incorporate wrestling, which is a very smart tactic to use. Obviously, you can't just assume that Max is going to stay on the feet. But yeah, so I'm going to be really honest in terms of how I feel Giga ranks in the featherweight division. And he definitely isn't going to be one of my go-to fighters. So overall, I don't even think he reaches the top 5 in the division for me personally, if I'm going to use him on ranked. If I want to have fun and really test myself, then yeah, maybe I'll opt to use him. But if I'm really playing to get wins and try hard, then Giga's not going to be the one for me. So of course, predominantly I think his main striking style is karate, but on the game we're going to look to kickbox with him. And in terms of kickboxing, obviously he is really smooth. He can transition from stances, so from orthodox to southpaw, and from southpaw you're going to really want to look to use the Giga kick, which is the roundhouse to the body. And you'll see throughout the fight I do try to do that. You're going to look to utilize leg kicks and keep your opponent within kickboxing range, and that's something that you're going to see that I do struggle with in this fight here, is that my opponent really breaks through the kickboxing range into the boxing range very, very well. And obviously I am coming up against one of the best fighters in the division, being Max Holloway, so maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on Giga. This was my first fight with Giga in which I used him. I did get 1 or 2 after this, but the finishes were a bit too quick and the fights overall wouldn't really showcase much to you guys. I really like to, in these videos, show you fights that maybe aren't going my way, or the real nitty-gritty side of the fights, because this is what you can expect to get online, especially in the higher divisions. And as you can see, this Max Holloway right now is completely dominating round 1, wrestling very well. In the boxing exchanges is doing very well. In the kickboxing, I'd say it's fairly even. We're both landing at a similar rate, but in terms of the round overall and damage done, this Max Holloway player has definitely secured the round. And my biggest knock on Giga, and this for me is huge, and this is probably why I wouldn't opt to use him over some of the other kickboxers in the division or strikers in the division, is he's a predominantly kicking heavy fighter, and his stamina is very, very low. So it's very counterproductive because kicks use up more stamina than punches, and he's very kick heavy, and his stamina is very low. In terms of recovery, his recovery isn't great either, so if you tie that in with the stamina loss, it's going to be even harder to recover after getting hurt. And especially in fights where it can go the distance and it can go into championship rounds in the higher ends of the division, he just doesn't really line up with what you want in a fighter. I want my fighter to be able to maintain stamina over a prolonged period of time, and especially if they kick heavy, they need to have the stamina to throw kicks fairly consistently. And I do want my fighter to be able to recover when getting hit to at a faster pace. I don't expect them to recover instantly. I don't expect them to have the best chin in the world, but I do expect Giga to recover at a reasonable rate. But you'll notice as the fight goes on that it becomes harder and harder for me to recover as the fight progresses when taking damage from this Max Holloway player. But you can see why I'm doing good here is that I am using the kicks to the body. I am utilising that. I'm now throwing the leg kicks a lot more. We got a leg health event this round. We landed a couple switch kicks to the body and roundhouses to the body, which is going to pay dividends in the championship rounds, and the mindset is when coming against Max Holloway is I need to take out that leg or that body, because the legs, if you take them out, will mitigate the power and it will be easy knockdowns in the later rounds. And if I damage the body, it will be easier to secure knockdowns because it's harder for my opponent to recover, because he can't really just walk away after getting hurt. And also it will just slow Max down, it will limit that volume, and the volume's the one thing that I'm finding particularly hard to deal with when using Giga, is that you can get really drowned very easily if your opponent knows how to pressure box very well. And it's even worse if they can pressure box and they're using a wrestler, because they'll push you up against the fence and then look to get a takedown. So there's a lot to consider when using Giga. I think when he's matched up against someone that's specifically looking just to stand, you're obviously going to have an easier time. That's, easier. That's common sense, to be honest. But when you look at some of the strikers in this division, the Max Holloways, the Conor McGregors, the even Volkanovski can cause Giga a lot of issues, the Korean Zombie. So I definitely wouldn't have him in my top 5, if I'm honest with you, in terms of fighters at featherweight. He's definitely not a go-to. To be honest, I'd say I'd still prefer to use Edson Barboza if I'm really going to want to kickbox. But if we're looking at the positives, these roundhouses to the body do a lot of damage. You can chain in a lot of good combinations. He does feel quite long and rangy, which is of course what he's meant to feel like in this division. So those aspects really do come through. His kicking game, his kicking arsenal's unreal. But like I said, you've really got to limit yourself. I think he's more of a 3-round fighter than a 5-round fighter. As you can see, coming into round 3, if you look at where my stamina's at, it's in a very, very good position. And this is just through pure patience. I know I've definitely got more stamina than my opponent here. And this is something that you really need to take note of if you are going to use Giga. So this fight here has obviously shown you that I've gone through some adversity when it comes to the wrestling and my opponent pressure boxing. As you can see, I'm starting to get out of the way of some of these strikes now. But if you want to use Giga at a higher level, you probably should mirror some aspects in which I've used in this fight, especially in terms of stamina management. Obviously, my opponent is starting to do a good job in breaking my block, and my head health is getting lower and lower. But the stamina management was the one thing I was really focusing on. You're always going to take damage when you're facing a Max Holloway player, just because of the sheer volume of punches Max Holloway players throw. And as you can see, it's not 1 or 2, it's normally 1, 2, 3, 4 combos and then 5. And my opponent's really going all out, working the body with the kicks, and as you can see, beautiful combination there, gets the stun, and I tried to get the knockdown there. So as you can see, that kick was lightning fast, done a lot of damage, and then we get the leg health event there. And so far we're doing a better job. So round 1 definitely wasn't our round in terms of overall damage and control of the fight. My opponent got the stuns and mixed in his wrestling very, very well, which is something that my opponent steered away from. That might just be due to my opponent's stamina level. He's probably thinking he doesn't want to shoot for too many takedowns, because if they start getting denied, he's going to lose even more stamina. And not only that, I feel like as the rounds progress, it's easier to deny takedowns, especially if your opponent's becoming more and more tired. So my opponent sort of deviated away from that, but again, had a very, very good round 1. But round 2 and 3, I'd say, were probably my rounds. If I'm looking at it, doing a lot more, we were doing better in terms of the stand up, definitely giving out a lot more damage, and it's been hard for my opponent to really try to drown me with the volume of strikes that Max Holloway normally throws. As you can see, we were just talking about obviously the takedowns and how my opponent hasn't been going for as many, and then my opponent ends up getting me down in this round here, doing a nice bit of damage with the ground and pound. And whenever I'm in the position when I'm in half guard, if I'm not using someone that's entirely comfortable off their back, which Giga's not going to be your go-to on the ground. I mean, as you saw in the Qatar fight, Giga didn't have the best of times when it went onto the ground, so I instantly went into sprawl, and then from sprawl, because I have the stamina advantage, we managed to get the reversal, and now I'm on top of my opponent, and I'm just going to look to see out the round, do some damage here. As you can see, I went to the body, just give him a little body shot, try to weaken it, and hopefully deny a couple transitions and waste my opponent's stamina. There's not much longer left in the round, so if I can match the control time that my opponent had, that would have been ideal. And as you can see, not too far off in terms of matching the control time. So That was a very, I'd say the round was going my way up until the wrestling exchanges, but we did get the stun that round, so I'm hoping that the judges give that round to myself and that it's 2 rounds to 1 going into the fourth. So this is going to be a big round. Depending how this round goes, I'll see how I need to play it out in the fifth round. But right now, Stamina's in a very good position, especially when using Giga. And this is exactly what you're going to look to do. As you can see, my opponent's starting to try clinch here. And one thing my opponent's doing very well is that he's letting me come forward and he's staying planted, so his strikes are coming out a lot quicker. And you can see that in some exchanges that my opponent seems a lot faster, and that's the reason for it, is that my opponent's planted, so he's not throwing whilst moving, and therefore his combinations coming out a lot quicker. But my opponent is starting to miss of a lot of combinations here, especially like 3-4 punch combos, which is only going to tax my opponent's stamina even more. I'm trying to be calm, as you can see, using the head movement, being patient, because that's exactly what you've got to do. I can't look to overcommit. This round's a very important round, because it will play out how I need to fight in the fifth. And my opponent's clinching a lot more, as you can see, really trying to get me up against the cage. Do a good job of utilising movement there, which is one thing the Giga felt good at, is that he feels very easy to move, flows very well. In and out of stances, I see no difference. It's the switch is really nice, so that's definitely one of his strong points, but that's to be expected. And my opponent's starting to try to clinch more and more, throwing in these leg kicks, and now I'd say I'm starting to control the fight a lot easier. The fight sort of played out at the pace I want it to play at. We're picking him apart with the strikes. As you can see, he checks that leg kick there, and a leg health event for my opponent, but that's to be expected when you're throwing this many leg kicks. Eventually your opponent's going to check however many of them. He gets me down from the clinch again, annoyingly. I tried to throw the up kick, but he waited patiently and then jumped on top, so got him in full guard here. As you can see, my head health isn't in the greatest position. I know he's going to look for the ground and pound at some point, because, you know, that's exactly what he's going to do. He's in full guard, he's going to look to get me in ground and pound. Try to flip him into half guard, but he pre-denied, so that's a good job for my opponent. And the main thing I'm thinking here is, when he is getting me down, as long as my opponent isn't doing too much damage, I don't think it will reflect as greatly on the judges' scorecards. His overall strikes will obviously be a lot higher, but in terms of significant strikes, as long as I can reduce that and throw more significant strikes, one on the feet, this round could go my way. At the moment it could go either way, but I definitely feel like I had more success in this round than my opponent. But when it does get to the ground, it's a very sticky situation when you're using Giga. So that's the stats for the round there, and I quickly flicked through all the rounds so you can see the stats. And yeah, overall this was a very hard fight, and respect to my opponent. And comes out with the respect there. Team kicks me back, and I know that my opponent's really probably going to try to get me to the ground and just hold on to me and hope to, you know, secure a finish or secure the decision victory, sorry, because in my opponent's head he probably thinks that if he wins this round he will win a decision, and that's exactly what I'm thinking right now. To be honest, at the time I was thinking I need a victory. I was thinking I need to finish in this round in order to win. So you all see that I push forwards, I take more risks, and that's purely because I feel like I need to get my opponent out of there if I want to win the fight. So we get the leg health event here, being patient. Although I feel like I need to get my opponent out of here, I am going to take obviously more risks, but calculated risks. So stun my opponent there. We lost stamina. I'm not too sure if we got the stun or we lost stamina. How that head kick didn't knock my opponent out, I will never know. That was timed really well, in my opinion, but somehow Max Holloway just survived that. And especially in the fifth round, I understand if that was the first or second, he's got a lot of stamina, not taken damage, but my opponent's definitely taken damage as the fight's progressed, round by round, accumulated more and more damage, and that was beautiful. So my opponent kept doing that pull elbow, and he caught me with it there and got the knockdown. So as it stands, this round is definitely going my opponent's way, unless I can get a knockdown. And you can see that my opponent's stamina levels are very low. You can just see by the way in which my opponent's standing. He gets a stun again, and stamina's gone. roundhouse to the body, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Throughout this fight, I didn't understand how the kicks to the body just weren't affecting Max, in the sense that I wasn't getting many stuns off of it, or just many critical moments. At least a stun I should be getting at this point in the fight, when Max has literally no stamina and is struggling. You can see by the way Max's stance is that literally struggling to breathe right now. His lungs, they're on a different wavelength, that he's completely finished, but somehow, some way, these body shots just aren't doing much. And this is definitely my opponent's round, so right now I'm thinking, okay, I definitely need a finish, because I think I'm going to lose on decision, or I'm praying that the judges at least gave me 3 rounds, because the rounds were very tight. They were very tightly contested between me and my opponent. It was a good fight. I just feel like when my opponent wrestled, obviously, that my opponent had a lot more success in that aspect of it. On the feet, other than this round, I feel like I controlled the fight, and as you can see right now, he's wasting the clock here. He just keeps taking me down through the clinch attempts, and this is all just to let the time go past. So that's the 5th round over, and I wasn't feeling confident going into the decision. I skipped it here, and you'll see that I ended up winning the fight. So I'll go back to the scorecards here and show you how it was scored. So yeah, Giga, he's alright if you want to test yourself. Definitely not one of the better fighters in the division, but if you feel like you could use him, this fight shows that you can go 5 rounds if you time yourself well. Thank you for watching. The next video will be a best of 3 against JMMA, so look forward to that. If you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.